Hi there, and welcome to Enterprise AI Innovators, a show where top technology executives share how AI is transforming the enterprise. In each episode, guests uncover the real-world applications of AI, from improving products and optimizing operations to redefining the customer experience. I'm Evan Reiser, the founder and CEO of Abnormal Security.
And I'm Saam Motamedi, a general partner at Greylock Partners.
Today on the show, we're bringing you a conversation with Sesh Tirumala, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Western Digital. With over 51,000 employees, 13,000 patents, and $13 billion in annual revenue, Western Digital is one of the world's largest data storage manufacturers. From enterprise data centers to high-performance hard drives for creative professionals, Western Digital has been a storage pioneer for over 50 years. In this conversation, Sesh offers insights on practical applications of AI in enterprise productivity, the critical role of IT in global manufacturing, and the future of IT architecture to enable business transformation. First of all, thank you so much sincerely for joining us today. Like I said, before we started recording, Saam and I were looking forward to this conversation. You've been a CIO at really many notable companies, Anaplan, PagerDuty, now Western Digital. Do you mind sharing a little about kind of your career and how you ended up where you are today?
So I started off as a EE electrical engineer. So that's what I did at school. My first job out of college was in Asia Brown Bowery. It's an electrical engineering giant, a Swedish and a Swiss-based company. So again, I was a design engineer, designing microprocessor-based technology for really power grid protection, right? So that's what I started off with. It was hardcore design for manufacturability is where I started. And this was in Bangalore in India. And I traveled quite a bit in the Far East, Southeast Asia, supporting a lot of customers. And then in the mid-90s, there was this big trend around, the US and software was the cool thing. So I made a career leap of faith and change from a hardware microprocessor EE background to software, and started off with Oracle Consulting in the East Coast, right? And since then, but I used a lot of my manufacturing background to build on top of the transformation and innovation, and solving problems with systems is always appealing, right? So over the time, I've grown through the ranks, supported manufacturing, sales, e-commerce, customers, and then slowly, brick by brick, you keep learning from your experience. And reward for good work is more work, right? So that's where I ended up.
If it's Monday morning, right, every week, and you wake up and get to work, like what's most top of mind, and what do you most look forward to in your current role?
Yeah, it's funny. My day is Sunday. It actually starts on a Sunday, right? Because we got so many factories in Asia, right? Like a lot of our hard disk drive is manufactured in Malaysia, Thailand. Likewise, our flash is built in Penang, Malaysia, and then in Shanghai. So between Japan, China, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, if you look at our geo time clock, it starts on a Sunday. So for me, what's most important, honestly, as a CIO, is the heartbeat of always on operations, right? Are your systems humming? Are your factory systems humming? Can you process your orders? Are shipments happening? So again, just to keep a bird's eye view in terms of, the key operational aspects, so that IT never comes in the way of revenue impact and customer sat, right? So that's what is top of mind for me. Then if you do a good job and perform, I call it the perform bucket, right? And you meet your SLAs, you meet your metrics, you're on top of your game, then you get a seat at the table to have a transformation discussion and an agenda, right? But if you don't do the basics, then you don't even have a seat at the table.
So I think, most of your peers I talk to are almost in total alignment that AI is going to transform many things you just described. Although I think there's a pretty significant cohort of that group that would say, hey, but that's like 3-4 years down the road, right? There's a lot of these technologies are unproven. Like we got to wait to see what happens. But also I know there's many examples where people in more kind of localized ways are really getting value out of, some of these new AI technologies. Do you mind sharing a couple, like maybe specific examples, right? And they could be very small, but where are you seeing kind of, these technologies applied to drive an impact to either, how you run the business, or even maybe some of the products that products and services you deliver for customers?
Yeah, no, great question, Evan. I mean, if I look at my day to day, right, the number of meetings I'm in, the number of calls I'm in, right? So even simple thing like a note taker, as an example, right? It's funny, even when you go to the doctor's office now, you have an assistant where the doctor doesn't have to go back and type all the notes that they just had, right? It's all automated. So likewise, I think in the work life too, a lot of it is many of us spend time in meetings, and you're trying to catch up, you can't be in all meetings, so just having that ability to key points made, note taking, summarizing, synthesizing actions is just a productivity enhancer, right, for you and your chief of staff and your whatever the team members are. So we see a lot of traction there, and it doesn't matter, right? We're a Microsoft shop, so we use a lot of Copilot features, etc. So, and then I also mentioned about search and findability. We're doing a minor proof of concept for about 400 users, and we're using a technology called Glean here, right? So again, our purpose there is, findability, right? Like I mentioned, simple things like your pay stubs, or, who's a sales rep that covers account A, or, what's the contact of so and so. So just that. It's funny because when you open up such a search and findability, it also exposes things that are not supposed to be found. So then you go back and say, hey, now we need to tighten our policies to make sure that we don't get to see Evan's information and compromise our PII, etc. Right? So we're doing some work around search, findability, better collaboration, etc.
When I talk to other technology leaders, I think there's a little bit of disappointment in like, hey, yeah, like the Copilot thing is really, really interesting and it looks cool and we use it once or twice. But like, it's not really changed how I work. Like, I think back to your point around PowerPoint slides and QBRs, like none of that's really changed. And so are there examples you've seen where you look at a business process, a function, and you're like, this is radically different now because of Copilot or because of one of these other tools? Like, I'm wondering if there's one that you could point to.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one silver bullet, right? Because in the world of your enterprise, again, I go back to, it's less about these technologies, but it's about, hey, can we? I mean, I generally prescribe to crawl, walk, run, right? And you don't want to be too invested too soon, but you want to get your feet wet, and then how you scale something, right? So to me, I think if you're a heavy meeting company and culture, right, having things like Copilot and summarize key things, I think is super important, right? On the other hand, if you're like, I'm a young startup, meetings are a death in terms of my productivity and my innovation, and I want more open, collaborative culture, less meetings, then I think it's a different paradigm, right? So to me, I think it goes back to industry, the global nature, and then when you're a global company, you can't be in all meetings. It's impossible, right? So to me, I think it just helps the organization scale. And there's also a cultural element because we all like to be having this fear of missing out, and we try to attend all meetings. And what if you told your staff you don't need to, and here's just a snippet that you need to know that happened. And 90% of the meetings are generally not action driven, right? They're an FYI and boring and monotonous. So again, you can spare a lot of people from pain. So I see value in that because of the heavy meeting culture.
Do you mind talking about maybe ways that outside of kind of like the latest Gen AI wave, but other ways are using kind of data science or machine learning or AI technologies to help improve or manage kind of manufacturing or some of your customer relationships or the employee experience. So I'm just saying, I know there's a lot of stuff in there, right? But any kind of notable things you would call out that maybe the average listener might be really surprised to hear some of the ways that, Western Digital's kind of delivered some of those innovations.
So one of the big things around the AI ML story is around, our test escapes, right? Like how many, if let's say you're producing 100 widgets on a line, you want 100% pass rate. You don't want any defects, right, on the line. So again, how do you predict quality failures, test escapes, manufacturing defects, even visual inspection, right? So because you could have your design and a firmware engineer or a mechanical engineer in the US and the factory is in Asia, and how do you use imaging and video imaging and things of that nature to potentially visually inspect quality issues. So again, and then also our business is a very capital intensive business, right? So sometimes you can't afford to have things that are idle. So again, machine idle time, throughput time, defect prediction, visual imaging, predictability of potential failures. So I think a lot of this, is what happens in the shop floor. And again, I'm no expert, but my team, we have a data science team and an analytics team that really runs a lot of the algorithms on large sets of data and on a cloud-based architecture, because again, you're bringing back data at the edge into the center, computing it, writing it back to the edge. So again, the just the streaming, the movement, the ingestion, it's a pretty fairly complex data landscape and architecture. But again, that's how we keep our supply chain humming and efficient. And which is why, to me, there's a lot of computer science and algorithms and math that goes in, right? Same thing, a lot of us have sustainability goals for the future. So knowing what your customer bought, how do we recycle products? How do we repurpose old drives? How do we erase data in a conscious manner? And then again, put it back in terms of either refurbish or repair, or in a different market that you can sell devices. So again, I think a lot of these things in terms of new versus aging infrastructure, install base, you need to really look at it holistically. So again, as a part of my team and the factory operations, there's a ton that goes on in that space.
So you've been at Western Digital for over a bit over a year now, almost a year and a half. Was there anything you encountered, right, kind of since you joined, where you're like, wow, I can't believe we do that?
Yeah, no, I think this whole factory automation, because again, if I compare and contrast from my prior experience, we were a very outsourced manufacturing, right, where we basically had like the Jables and the Flextronics do all the bulk of manufacturing, and all you gave them was a demand signal and what to build. But I think here what caught me was, we own our factories, and we're responsible for the digital twin and the layout and looking at the efficiency, the robotic process automation and all that. And to me, the factory, automation in terms of how material moves, how the lines are efficient, how we can predict in terms of supply demand matching, how do we look for failures? And then the whole data ingestion, data movement, data engineering, and the data architecture is just amazing in terms of what was built, right? So that to me was definitely a wow, yeah, that I'd totally underestimated.
It feels like every year is a decade's worth of progress. And so, like, when you put on your hat of like future looking 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, what do you think is going to be possible in the context of like a business like Western Digital? I don't know if there's one or two things that you think like if you told me now, it feels like magic, but 5, 7, 10 years from now will feel like they're the bread and butter of either how the business is run or how your products are delivered and built and delivered to customers.
If I fast forward and work my way backwards, do I have an IT architecture, right, that truly can talk about predictability, where my sales data, my procurement data, my order data, my contract data are all so well connected that I'm able to tell you, like, hey, sales rep, take this action because company ABC is going to churn, right? And so that to me is one simple use case. The second thing is, again, information and findability is at your fingertips, and you really don't need to call some IT professional to get your to get a problem solved. So really frictionless, no touch with IT, smaller IT staff, right? Even within Western Digital, I still think, as a percentage of revenue and productivity, we have some ways to go. And lastly, I don't know, I'm an old guy and I've done a lot of ERP implementations, and ERP is still a beast, right? And it costs a lot of money. It's hard to change. And a lot of your crown jewels of data sit there. So to me, the other thing is, can you really make ERP light, where it does what it needs to do, like process a sales order, fulfill a customer demand. It does the basics, strong and does it well. But are there things that we can take on top of it, that we can innovate, that really optimizes for the customer life cycle, right? And the employee life cycle. To me, I always look at IT strategy as one bookend being your customer and the other bookend being employees, right? And then when you take a sales rep, in some cases, the sales rep is a proxy for the customer because that's the last mile. And we need to think in arming and personalizing stuff for the rep in order for them to have an effective conversation with the customer. So back to your original question, it's all digitized. You're managing by exception, not by every transaction. And really there's no touches, there's no failure rate, and you have a lot more, predictive stuff. And hopefully from a environment and environment and sustainability perspective, that we really don't have data centers and, in the sense, I mean, it's the other extreme, right? But we're able to leverage a lot of it as a service and not really have a lot of servers and infrastructure because it all adds to the overall, cost and carbon footprint. And so you got to also be environmental friendly, right? So that's super important.
Are there anything like you're hearing from your peers? So I want to ask you kind of like the other side of that, maybe where you're feeling a little more bearish. Are there kind of, I'm sure you've heard things from your peers where they're saying, oh, I think, AI would be a great thing for go this. And you're probably sitting there saying, I don't know. I don't think that's actually like, the right place to focus, or it's not the right maturity. Like, what would be the kind of the top things that maybe you would kind of advise maybe to your peers to like wait a little bit or don't focus there? Kind of where do you think maybe AI won't have the impact that most people expect?
So the way I would look at it is come at it from a people, process, and systems perspective, right? Firstly, create a governance structure where you don't have everyone doing willy-nilly within the company and organization. So stand up a governance structure and have key reps from the key functions that can represent and bring in, not for bureaucracy's sake, but really to really be the spokesperson and evangelize things. So you need a governance structure. The second thing is, I think you need to jump in and not wait, right? Because if you wait for too long, then you're going to be irrelevant. So it's important to get your teams to, test out of the box solutions. Like I said, we already named a few solutions, but at the same time, also look at, like the Databricks of the world, the Snowflakes of the world, et cetera, right? Because I think data to me is going to be the ultimate differentiator, both from a cost and connective tissue perspective. So again, you need to, and then you can't, again, and when it comes to data, there's things like sovereignty, security, where do you put your data comes into play, right? So you need the security officer and your chief legal officer tied at the hip, creating the right policy, right? So have a technology track, have a governance, and then have a procurement, security, and legal team advising in terms of the do's and the guardrails, right? In such a way that we are conscious in the approach that we are taking, and look at the maximizing of business cases. And I'm always biased in any company, right? Between sales and R&D, they make up 55, 60% of the company. So I'm always looking at use cases that can give back a sales rep 1 hour a week or more. And likewise to a developer, right? In terms of focused on architecture and design instead of doing mundane coding that somebody else can help digitize, right? So to me, anything for engineering, anything for sales, and that connected tissue of sales and support, right? Having that closed loop, I think is super important.
Appreciate you sharing. Okay. So the last kind of couple of minutes here, we'd like to do a lightning round. So kind of looking for like the one tweet answers. I know these questions are very hard to answer in like the, whatever, I don't know what the latest is, 280 characters or whatever it is, but kind of going for like a, the punchier it takes. So we got like 5 or 6 questions. Saam, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. So to start off, Sesh, how do you think companies should measure the success of a CIO?
How are you doing for top line and how are you doing for bottom line?
What's one piece of advice you wish someone told you when you first became a CIO?
Learn more about the security posture.
What do you think most IT leaders underestimate about the opportunity with AI?
Lack of data maturity or preparation.
Maybe switching gears to the more personal side. Is there a book you've read that's had a big impact on you? And if so, I'd love to hear which one and why.
There's this book called Driving Digital Strategy by Sunil Gupta. It's reimagining businesses and processes. I find that to be very useful every time I read. I love that book.
And maybe staying on the personal side, what's an upcoming new technology, and it doesn't have to be related to AI, that you're personally most excited about?
I'd love something where, I'm an architectural guy, right? And I'll always be asking questions and I like simple visuals. I hate PowerPoint slides that are 1,000 words long. So to me, a cool technology would be like, hey, here's what I'm thinking as a high level business process. And it just gives me like a framework rather than me having to go and find a framework to build a slide from. That'll be a cool technology.
Agree.
Maybe last question here. What do you think will be true about technology's future impact on the world that most people would consider science fiction? And kind of looking for like the contrarian view, right? What do you think is going to happen that most people don't, right? Trying to figure out kind of where you maybe have a different perspective than, the average listener or average, CIO, CTO.
I think it's about a meeting experience. Given we are such a globally distributed workforce, right? How do you simulate without having the need to travel, and as though you're all in the same room and collaborating with 3D? And I think that to me will be super cool if you make it happen. It just breaks all barriers. So
yeah, it definitely changes a lot of things. And it feels like with the way the world's kind of being increasingly like globalized, right, and digitized, that's going to be a key need for the future.
Yeah.
Sesh, thank you so much for making time to chat with us today. Really enjoyed the conversation and looking forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks a lot, Sesh.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. It was fun.
That was Sesh Tirumala, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Western Digital.
Thanks for listening to Enterprise AI Innovators. I'm Saam Motamedi, a general partner at Greylock Partners.
And I'm Evan Reiser, the founder and CEO of Abnormal Security. Please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find more great insights on enterprise AI transformation at enterprisesoftware.blog.
This show is produced by Josh Meir. See you next time.